Let's talk about the AI operating system for interior design. My name is Ben McKenzie. I'm the fractional AI officer for 1584 Design. And in this video today, we're going to cover the three things that are stopping you from using AI effectively as a design business, the 5-part system that removes these obstacles, and then the next level of AI that this system unlocks for your business. I want to frame this with a problem. You've probably experienced this, but AI's output is often generic. It doesn't sound like your business at all, or it's just plain wrong. And in this example, we kind of see in this highlighted text here, this is a hallucination. A hallucination is something that AI makes up. So when you're using this in your business, you're going to see this all the time unless you have certain things in place. So that's the first problem. And what it does is it highlights this requirement. AI needs the right context in order to do its job right. In this case, the context you would use to make this output good is you'd probably provide your brand voice guide, notes about the project you're creating the update for, because in this case, the example is a client update. Like let's say you run a weekly update for your clients. And then finally, you might want to provide the status, and this could come from maybe your project management software, on the delivery of these dining chairs, for example. So if you ran the same prompt, but you provided the right context, you might get something else, something that sounds more like you as opposed to this. And I don't know how you write or how you talk, but whatever tone is appropriate for your business, that would be captured along with the correct facts. In this case, that the dining chairs are still on order. So the first requirement is that AI needs context. In general, typically people try to use AI without providing this, and they run into these problems when that happens. Now, the second problem is that even if you provide the right context and you understand that when you're writing prompts, you have to provide context, every single new chat is a blank slate and you have to provide that context all over again. So in this example here, you can see that you would have to write this by hand or copy and paste it, probably a mix of both, if you were, let's say, to create a weekly update for the following week. And so every week you would have to do this, and that can become annoying and waste time. So this calls out the second requirement if you really want to run AI effectively in your business, and that's that AI needs this context I've been talking about without you. Ideally, you don't have to provide it. The AI just finds it on its own. And so this example kind of shows what that would look like. You would just say, please draft this week's client update for the Smith project. Or, I mean, we're not going to cover this in this video, but eventually you could have this run automatically and have these drafts be created automatically. And if you have things set up right, the AI will find the right context on its own and then create the right message. Now, this leads to the third problem. That's that even if AI has all the context that it needs and it gets it without your help, it still can't do much. And I mean, it can't do much in the real world, like drafting actual emails in your inbox, creating calendar events, etc. So you might ask AI to send the update to the Smiths and then add something to your calendar or mark a milestone in your project tracker, but AI would say, I can't do that. I can create the draft of the email here inside of Claude Desktop or ChatGPT or whatever, but you've got to copy and paste it in. So you're still the middleman. And so this third requirement is that AI needs tools in order to interact with the world. And so if you give it access to tools, when you make that request, like you can see here, it'll actually call those tools and just tell you, all right, I did it, without you having to intervene. So we've got 3 problems, and those problems map to 3 requirements. The first problem being that AI's output is often bad, and the requirement this calls out is the need for context. You got to give AI the right context. The second problem is that you've got to provide this context by hand every single chat, unless you satisfy requirement 2, which is you give AI a way to get that context without you. And then the third problem is that, hey, even if you give it context and give it a way to get it on its own, it still can't do very much unless it has tools to interact with the world, unless it has hands, so to speak, it can use to act on your behalf. And so the solution is what we call an AI operating system. And it's kind of like that scene in The Matrix when Neo is with Morpheus and he plugs into the Matrix and he downloads this Kung Fu skill and he wakes up and he's like, I know Kung Fu. That's what it's like to work with these agents when you have an AI operating system. You rent these agents from OpenAI or from Anthropic, and then you plug your AI operating system in them and they start the work that you want them to do, already understanding your business. And this AI operating system breaks down into 5 pieces and I'm going to kind of talk about them in reverse order. So we've got the business OS. This is basically a collection of documents that describes how your business works and captures key information about your business, including your business profile, any procedures you have around how work gets done, and then assets that AI can use as examples. And we're going to cover this more in detail in the following sections, but you've got that. That thing is going to provide AI the context it needs, but it has to be able to navigate your business OS. So it needs an atlas. It needs a map that tells it, here's where you can find this, here's where you can find that, so that it can assemble the context it needs from your business OS. Now, when it comes to doing stuff, it needs tools, right? But when you give AI tools, you have to connect the tool to the AI with things that either you have to create custom, or in some cases they're stock connectors. That's what we call them, these things that connect agents to their tools. You need those in order for your agents to be able to use tools, even if the tools exist. And then the final thing is you need a place where all of this kind of lives and runs. You need a platform where you can rent agents and run agents. So that's a high level overview. And we're going to dive into the details around these things right now. So first, we've got the business OS. This is the most important part of this system because this is the part that's unique to your business. And without it, AI is going to kind of operate blindly and work in the dark. And like I mentioned earlier, this is the documented version of how your design firm operates, and it gives AI the context it needs to work in alignment with your brand voice, with your standards, and actually create good outputs and do correct work. The profile piece, these are the stable characteristics of your business. What's your identity? What's your brand voice? What are your ideal client profiles? What do your services and pricing look like? Who's on your team? What tools do you use? All this stuff that doesn't really change very often about your business lives there. And then we have procedures, and this is essentially SOPs and standards. Everything that describes how stuff gets done properly. So this is what you would hand to an employee if you were to hire someone and you wanted them to get something done on day one. You'd give them your procedures, your SOPs, and your standards. And then finally, we have what we call assets. And these are basically things you've created in the course of running your business, whether they are proposal templates, email campaigns, contract templates, sales call recordings, brand files like your logo and your style guide. All that stuff falls under assets. And when you have all these things together, you have a complete business OS. Now, the second piece, it goes hand in hand with your business OS, and that's what we call your AI Atlas. And this is the map that AI uses to navigate your business OS. This allows AI to grab the context it needs without you reloading it every session and without having to point out where exactly AI should look in the business OS to get what it needs. So this lets you be very hands-off with your context management, which is the key to making sure that AI does good work and creates good outputs. This kind of falls into three categories like a lot of this stuff. First, we have where to find things. So this is a list of every file in your business OS, what's in it, how the AI can get there. And without it, AI basically wouldn't have a reliable way to know what the OS contains or how to reach any of it. And then second, we have to also tell AI where to put things because your business OS is going to change over time. You're going to create new assets. You're going to modify your SOPs, and it's got to know for each one of those things, where does it put that information? Because without it, your business OS would get really messy and it would be harder and harder for AI to use it over time. And then finally, we have how to name things. These are rules around how every file gets named in your business OS. And that's important because you want a backup to the index that I described in the where to find things section. So in where to find things, we have this file that is basically an index of where all your stuff lives and where AI can find stuff. But what you'll find is that AI won't always consult that index. And so what you want is for all your files in your business OS to be named in a descriptive way so AI can find stuff in an alternative manner when it doesn't consult the index. So all those three things together, that's your AI Atlas. The third piece is tools, and these are the hands, so to speak, that AI uses to actually do work in your existing business systems like Gmail, your calendar, etc. Examples of this would include sending an email, pulling a file that you might need, generating a proposal, anything that involves interacting with other systems, editing files, creating files, deleting things, all that stuff is done with tools. The fourth piece is connectors. These wire your tools to your agent. And there are three types of these connectors, and you don't really need to understand these unless you really want to get into the technical pieces of this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them. So CLI, the main thing to know here is that they're going to save you tokens. They're going to preserve your context better just because of the way they work, and I'm not going to go into it. They're also composable. That's a benefit. Again, I'm not going to go into what that means, but it basically lets agents use tools a little bit faster. And then the main limitation here is that these things only run locally on a computer. So if you wanted to be able to use a connector on your phone and on your computer, you wouldn't want to use a CLI connector. The second type is an MCP connector, and these use up more tokens. Right now, they're currently getting redesigned, but for now, they use more than CLI tools. But the benefit is that you can use them locally on your computer or remotely from your phone. So if it's really important to you to be able to do your AI stuff from your phone or from your computer, then you're going to want to use MCP connectors. The third category is APIs, and APIs are what CLI and MCP connectors are built on top of. It's going to be rare that your agents use APIs directly, but you might have little tools that just live on your computer, like scripts or something, that do use APIs. But in general, you don't need to worry about understanding any of these categories. Just understand that when you're creating connectors, based on what you're trying to do, you're going to use one of these three. The fifth and final piece here is what we call your platform, and it's probably the least important part of your whole AI operating system. And the reason is that you can change it up pretty easily if you set up the rest of your AI operating system correctly. And there are three pieces. So first we have the app you use, and that's going to be Claude Desktop, ChatGPT Desktop, or Anti-Gravity, which is Google's new product. And all these apps do pretty much the same thing. They let you rent agents, interact with agents, and organize the work that you do with agents. Obviously, these apps have to live on a device, whether that's a computer or a phone or whatever. And so that's the second piece. That's where the app runs. I do most of my work on a Mac, and I tend not to do much AI work on my phone. Right now, there are some things that make it a little bit difficult to use both your phone and a computer to access your business OS and run an AI operating system, but it is possible. And as time goes on, it's going to be easier and easier to use your AI operating system across devices. Finally, we have your account, and your account is going to give you access to a vendor's agents. Most of the major companies out there have similar plans. We have the Claude Max plan from Anthropic, we have ChatGPT Pro from OpenAI, and we have Google AI Ultra from Google. Again, there are pros and cons to going with one vendor or another. When you're first getting started, you don't need to worry too much about your choice of vendor or app. The important thing is to just make sure that you set everything else up so that you can easily switch platforms if you decide that's appropriate. So where does this leave us? If you get all 5 of these pieces in place and you have your AI operating system installed, we've essentially solved the 3 problems we started with for everyday AI use. So that's kind of using AI on an ad hoc basis to get things done. We have the bad output problem solved because AI uses your business OS for context, so your output is good and usable and stable. Next, we've solved problem 2, which is related to wasting time on context, because remember, every chat is a blank slate. And you don't want to be copying and pasting, typing a bunch of stuff by hand if you don't have to. We do that by making sure that when you rent one of these AI agents, you can plug it into your AI OS and it can just find the context for you. And then finally, we have solved problem 3, which is related to the fact that AI can't do much on its own unless you give it tools. And if you don't, you're still the middleman, because you have to take what it gives you, what it creates for you, and you have to copy and paste it into your calendar or into your email app or whatever. So with problem 3, we use connectors to let AI use tools directly, whether that's sending emails, pulling files, or whatever. Now we get an additional benefit when we have solved these 3 problems for everyday AI use, for ad hoc tasks. And that's that we can now build AI employees that are easy to create and highly effective for repeatable work. So if you have stuff that you do on a repeated basis, stuff that you do every day, every week, whatever, that's when you want to build an AI employee. But those are kind of hard to make if you don't have the foundation in place. But if you do have it in place, then it gets a lot easier and it becomes realistic for somebody who isn't an AI expert. And specifically in your case, for operators who understand how to think in systems, but they may not be comfortable yet with AI. And so that is the big unlock that lets you take AI to the next level once you've used your AI operating system to solve the problems that come up in everyday AI use.